Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome Madam Mukta Sinha ji, Shri Anil Swarup ji, and all the respected dignitaries in the house, my dear colleagues and students. Benjamin Franklin has said, either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. Today we have amongst us such a noble soul, a ferocious warrior who has not only accomplished something which can be written about, but has also himself written something which could be read several times and read. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Anil Swarup ji to all. His career spanning 38 years, Anil Swarup ji attempted to make it happen. Born in Allahabad, Uttar Pradesh, he earned his master's degree in political science from Allahabad University in 1978, where he was also awarded the Chancellor's Gold Medal for being the best all-round student. Before joining the Indian Administrative Services (IAS) in 1981, he served as the Indian Police Service for a year. He won the Director's Gold Medal for the Best Officer Trainee at the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy for Administration amongst the officers of his batch. As a civil servant, he held various assignments within both the state of Uttar Pradesh and central government. During the final years of his career, he served as Secretary to Government of India in the Ministry of Coal, where he handled the aftermath of the coal scam. Thereafter, he served as Secretary, School Education and Literacy, where he attempted to foster public-private partnerships to improve quality of education. As a strategic leader and an innovative thinker, he won several awards and nominations, and the prominent ones are nominated as one of the policy change agents by the Economics Times during the year 2010, 12, 15, and 16. He was selected as one of the 35 action heroes in India Today's 35th annual edition. Founder chairman of Nexus of Good, an initiative towards recognizing positive action and providing inspiration to the society at large to replicate them. He is also the author of 3 bestsellers. The first one was Not Just a Civil Servant. He has recently published 2 more books, No More a Civil Servant and Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant. May I request our esteemed director, sir, to welcome Shri Anil Swarup ji with a green certificate. Yes. So this is the tradition of Jaipuria Jaipur that we welcome our guests. The green certificate. A tree has been planted on your name, sir, and this tree is for tigers in Sundarbans. We are also blessed and very fortunate to have Madam Mukta Sinha ji, IAS Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Government of Rajasthan, Jaipur, as the session anchor for today. Ma'am is a civil servant currently holding charge as Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Government of Rajasthan. She was previously Secretary, Food, Civil Supplies and Consumer Affairs, Government of Rajasthan, where she leverages IT and data analytics for bringing in transparency and accountability in public distribution system with an outreach of 450 million consumers. She has huge experience in the field of promotion of industry and commerce, having worked as MD LICO, Commissioner Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor in the state and as Director of Foreign Trade for NAFTA and Latin American regions, as well as Director of Export Promotion for Commodity Divisions of Textiles and Marine Products in the Ministry of Commerce, Government of India. She was also the lead negotiator and coordinator for the India-Canada CEPA negotiations from 2014 to 2016. Among her vast field experiences, one may count her stint as collector and district magistrate for several districts in Rajasthan, including the district of Shri, Jhunjhunu, Hanumangarh, and Bhuj. As regards her educational qualification, she received her honors degree in history from Lady Shri Ram College, where she topped the college, and also the recipient of Manorama Desai Best Student Award in history. She has also won the Principal's Prize for promoting academic ethos of the college. May I request Director Sir once again to welcome. Now I take the privilege to invite Director Sir for a welcome address. Before that, I would like to introduce him to you also. Professor Prabhat Pankaj is a postgraduate in economics and a PhD in applied economics. He obtained his first position in the University of Graduation and a University Gold Medal in postgraduation. He has been teaching economics at postgraduate and undergraduate level for about 30 years in several universities and B-schools in India and abroad, including 7 years in Bhutan. Dr. Prabhat Pankaj obtained executive education in management and leadership in higher education from Harvard University, Boston, USA. He has published more than 30 papers and written 5 books on diverse areas, including economics of happiness, trade, and environment. He also writes in the Times of India and Economic Times. Professor Prabhat Pankaj delivers workshops and sessions and offers consultancy on outcome-based education, student learning, and happiness management. He runs a blog titled The Learning Corridor. Currently, he is serving as director of Jaipuria Institute of Management. Sir, may I invite you?
Very good morning, each one of you sitting in this hall. And I'm feeling very privileged today to be among the galaxy of intellectual speakers, authors, and a personality like Anil Swarupji and Mukta Sinha Madam, and many others in the hall. I'm sure each one of you must be feeling the same pride that you are here sitting in this hall today and going to witness kind of deliberation which is going to stand out of its own. We have spoken about Anil Swarupji at length, our real hero. Definitely, it calls for it. We have seen heroes in the files, we have seen heroes in the stories, we have seen heroes in the movie, but we hardly see a real hero like Anil Swarupji walking on this earth, and we are very fortunate that he's here among us and going to share his experience. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request on behalf of every one of us to join us together. This is good. What a profound idea, and being from the field of academics, I always say that he sounds more like a professorial jest. He talks more with a professorial jest, and more of academic flair into it. A profound thought leader. So I would like to call him a thought leader of the generation. The nexus of good has the potentiality of doing larger good to our society. What we are lacking in the society today is people working for a larger good. And at the international level, I was going through the LinkedIn study which has come very recently, which talked about what is the trend of different countries, approaching the LinkedIn learning, what for, and that's a very revealing, data that they have presented. And they said that about 67% of Indians are looking for AI courses based on technology courses. So we are still into discovering what technology can do for us. And look at what US and Europe is doing. That actually tells us the whole story, how it is going. About 72% of the US people who search for the job on LinkedIn, some courses for LinkedIn, they want to update themselves, are about leadership, it's about people, it's about team building, it's about diversity. And look at the difference of thought process that we have and the rest of the world has. We have to catch up, and most of us will agree with the fact that we are in a world where we are dealing with the people, and it is more about people. It's about relationship. It's about connection. It's about collaboration, and the nexus of good idea at this juncture, at this point of time, is no less than a panacea for all of us. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have this opportunity of listening more about nexus of good today. So, along with my colleague here at Jaipuria, I heartily welcome Anil to this campus. He has been a friend, philosopher, and guide for Jaipuria, and I would like to just narrate one connection that we have developed with Jaipuria and Mudda Synergy. We have written a case study on Mudda Synergy, and we have started experimenting on contextualizing learning, because we thought, our faculty thought that probably we are in Rajasthan, so there is a lot to learn from Rajasthan. And one of the ways to learn from Rajasthan is to write cases on Rajasthan. So, I mean, what can be better than to write a case on a person like Mudda Synergy, who has transformed the entire system in her own way. The lady with a very strong voice, a strong thought process, strong arm, a strong mind. How she has actually climbed up to the top and made changes at the grassroots. It's a story to be told, and we have written that story, and we have created something called Leadership Lab. Our faculty have written more than 12, 13 cases from Rajasthan. We are in the process of writing more cases from Rajasthan. Of course, we are in different and diverse fields. And this was also a pedagogical innovation for us. This whole contextualizing learning and learning from the local stories is also an experimentation of pedagogical innovation, because we strongly feel that the way we teach the student is the indicator of how the students are going to learn. The students are not learning because we are not teaching the way they really want to learn. That is the gap that we have to fill in. And this attempt was one of the attempts that we have had to fill in this gap and to make our students learn. So it was also a pedagogical innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you to join hands to welcome Mudda Synergy. Some of the dignitaries present in the hall, but I would not take that risk of taking these names, because I'll be missing many names which I don't have. So I don't want to do that. So in order to be on the safer side, I would like to welcome each one of you, the dignitaries who are in the hall today, the media people, the bureaucracy, high-profile people who are here today. You all matter so much to us, and we feel so privileged that you are here in this campus. We'd also request you, after this session, if you can take a tour of this campus. I can guide you to the campus tour, and would like to tell you what we do over here as Management Institute, which is in the private sector #1 Management Institute in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome all our guests and dignitaries today. Between what we really want to listen and what I'm going to talk about, I just take half a minute with the permission of Anil to tell you one single differentiator that we have been able to create here in Jaipuria, because it's an opportunity for me also to tell all of you what we are doing here. So I'm not going into the great detail, but just one differentiator. We are working on something called mental health and well-being, which is the call of the day. After the pandemic, we all know that there is so important. How we are working is that we are working on a model called PERMA, that comes from the clinical psychology, and we're working with the brain science. We're taking the clue from the brain science, we've taken the clue from economics, we've taken clue from sociology, and we're adding them together to work on something called PERMA model. So P stands for the positive environment. What it says is that positive environment is what we do creates the environment. So let's do something that creates positive environment. In positive environment, everybody benefits. So that's the benefit of the gain from the positive environment. So we are in cashing upon building positive environment. We are not going to leave any leaf unturned to create a positive environment in the campus. E stands for engagement. The model says that, well, it's your engagement that actually defines your happiness, your mental well-being. People who are not fruitfully engaged are the ones who actually suffers from mental problems more than the people who are fully engaged. So engagement is there, and that engagement is a positive engagement. Third is relationship. How you build a relationship with people. It's not about creating the network. It's not about knowing people. It's about how you build a relationship with the people. And the relationship cannot be built without touching the heart. So you need to touch the heart of each and every person you meet, and then you build a relationship. And the more deeply you build the relationship, the better you become in terms of mental health, in terms of your well-being, in terms of your positive outcome. The fourth is M, and it stands for meaning. So finding the meaning in life is so important. The research clearly indicates that the people at the age of 50 or 60, they look back their life and ask this question, have they been satisfied with their life? One of the things that actually makes you satisfied is that if you feel that you have actually found some meaning in your life. Right kind of question that you need to answer is that who you are as a person. So at the end of the day, answering this question matters quite a lot. And this is what we are all here for. So we work on meaning quite a lot. And the last is achievement. Of course, achievement is the protoplasm of success, and it makes us do more things. Of course, achievements are more dopamine based. And when you try to find out the meaning, it's more serotonin or maybe oxytocin based happiness that you're looking for. So in fact, we're making a combination of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphin, all this combined together is going to make us happy. It's not just the dopamine which is going to make us happy. It's not like life is not about having ice cream. Life is also about finding meaning. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And
Thank you very much, Dr. Pankaj Prabhat and your team at Jaipuria. It's an honor to be sharing stage with the absolutely amazing and iconic Anil Swarup, who's not just a civil servant, no more a civil servant. And that puts us in an ethical dilemma of how we should conduct this session today. On behalf of everybody who's present here, a very, very warm welcome to Anil sir, to Madam Swarup, and to so many dignitaries whom I've met, so many officers, and such a lovely, discerning audience that we have today. Thank you very, very much for being here, spending this lovely morning with us. Makes my task very difficult because I have just about 30-35 minutes to conduct this session. So pardon me if I am crisp and incisive as sir has asked me to with my questions, but I'm also mindful that this is being recorded. If I were to take a minute before I begin, if I can say questioning, I'm forgetting all hierarchy in this conversation, sir, to make it crisp and candid. So, if I were to define Anil Swarup, because I have progressed with each publication of his book. When his first book came out, I was sitting right there in the corner in the same hall as an audience. When his second book was about to come, he gave me the honor during the lockdown to be able to enter into a conversation with him, of course, as part of the IAS Literary Society that we run online. And now, when his third book has come out, I have the very, very pleasure and privilege and honor of sharing the dais with him. So I think that is the effect that you have on officers, that you ensure that with every evolution that you have, you also take along your officers. And if You need any proof? I sit right beside you, sir, as proof of who you are and what you are. So thank you, my eternal gratitude to you, sir, for the kind of influence and impact that you have on people around you. And in this, I think, as you very rightly also mentioned, since ma'am is here, your support at the back end is fully acknowledged, ma'am. So with these words, uh, of course, I'm hoping everybody will read or has already read sir's book. Sir was a meritorious student, an unambiguous go-getter civil servant, now a prolific writer, iconic orator, the founder of Nexus of Good, not just the founder, but also creating the network of good. And I know what is next to come, another stage of evolution, which we will witness soon. So I will begin with your first book, just to set the context and also rope in that book. But my question this time is different. When you say not just a civil servant, a wonderful way to explain the transition that is taking place, because people have written, I'm not a civil servant, an uncivil servant, a lot of books like these, and your first book was iconic in the fact that it spoke about, you have a fantastic style of writing, which is very, very anecdotal. It is not moralistic, it is not didactic, it allows you the freedom to choose. But when you say not just a civil servant, what do you mean? What is that X factor in the not just a civil servant? We'd like to know that.
Thank you very much. First of all, thanks a lot to Jaipuria Institute of Management for organizing this. And thank all of you. On a holiday, you've assembled here to participate in the discussion here. I'm really grateful to all of you. Not just a civil servant was titled, because during the course of my career of 38 years, I came to understand that the term bureaucracy or a babu or civil servant is actually used in a pejorative sense, and sometimes for very good reasons. Because civil servant has a connotation that there is authority, there is distance, there is opacity, and that's why I said, by definition, one could be a civil servant, but one has to be beyond a civil servant and do things which are not usually expected of a civil servant. So you cut the distance, you cut the opacity, become transparent, you get in touch with people, you start delivering things, you cut the red tape. That's beyond being a civil servant, because as is usually understood in the common parlance, civil servant is the one who's blocking things. So is there a possibility of a civil servant of being beyond a civil servant? Obviously, you have to be a civil servant by definition, but going beyond is breaking those glass walls, those glass ceilings. You're doing things which are not normally associated with a civil servant. Can that be done? It's not only the first book, in fact, more so in the second book, I try and illustrate that it is eminently possible for a civil servant to go beyond being a civil servant. And it's not, as you rightly mentioned at the beginning, it's not that, there's no gyan there, so to say, any of my books. And probably the decisions that I took or the actions I took, I don't say they were correct decisions. In fact, in some of them, when I reflect, I say probably that was not the right thing I did, but that is what I did. That is how it happened. So of course, some people do ask me that you focused on what you did. I said, only I know what I did. Beyond that is all hearsay. Somebody else did. Why he did, only he could know. I can only tell what I did. Not everything right. There were so many wrongs, there were so many mistakes, there were so many failures, but that's how it was. And it was, I felt, in retrospect, was beyond the usual definition of a civil servant that is understood. And that's why this title, Not Just a Civil Servant.
Thank you so much, sir. We will jump into the section which talks with dilemmas, because everybody who's here is in some kind of a paradoxical situation, looking at how they can resolve it. And I think sir's second book, which talks of ethical dilemmas, actually begins by defining what is ethics. And we have a different understanding of ethics, and we get confused between what is morality, what is ethical. Is it good to be honest in these times? because we are just a handful of 5,000 officers running a country of 1.2 plus billion people. We emerge from the same civil society, sir, but we are not seen as a reflection or a mirror of the civil society from which we are emerging. A little degradation in the civil society has an equal impact on the sum of the whole from which we are part. So my second question to you, sir, is that this great debate has always been there between, to be honest, it's a very Hamletian kind of a thing, to be honest or to be efficient, and is there a way that the two strains, the East is East, the West is West, can the two strains merge in the kind of work that we do? But in your book, you also mentioned a third factor, because that is very much like Anil sir. I mean, if you don't get the X factor beyond what is known. So sir mentioned something called the honest, efficient, and the non-pliable. Would you talk a little bit about this? Because you've served for 38 years, and I'm sure in your own 38 years, as we read from the books, you have seen various shades, and life is not black and white, various shades of gray. And you write in one of the chapters very nicely about usage of car. You bring out the gray areas about how honest officers also have the yin and yang quality about them. So my question to you is, do you think and honesty can be taught, or is it something that is ingrained? And how officers today, because we also have probation today, how the officers today can remain to be honest as you have been, carry integrity, and still be efficient and deliver outcomes that are required?
I'm so glad that we have some officer trainees also with us. And probably over a period of time, they will discover, as I discovered over a period of time. And that's the essence of the book. Essence of the book is that honesty pays. You know, in this audience, without embarrassing those individuals, I see Satish Mehta sitting here. I see my colleague, Rakesh Jain, sitting here. I see my friend and colleague, Atul Mathur, sitting here. All have been successful and all were honest. We have Mr. Savagia sitting here, who is the Chief Labour Commissioner in India, honest and successful. You know, the misfortune is that we don't look at those successful models of honesty and efficiency. We look at such honest models who are suffering. So everywhere we see, oh, he's honest, oh, he's suffering, and everyone pities them. No, my book is a celebration of the existence of honest and efficient. There are a large number of officers who are honest and efficient. You know, the misfortune is that we are so fond of masala, and that's an Indian trait, that we don't look at good people. So we say that he's efficient, so dishonest. It doesn't work that way. Yes, there are dishonest, efficient people. There are dishonest, inefficient people. There are honest, inefficient people. I write in a chapter in the book that honesty alone is not enough. Honesty is a necessary condition, but not sufficient condition for a good officer. He has to be efficient. Now, people ask me, are you talking some nonsense somewhere? No, I'm grounded. I'm looking at officers like Satish Mehta, Atul Mathur, Rakesh Jain, Savaria, and many others sitting here who are on, I can vouch for these officers. They were honest, they are honest, and they were successful. It's not that they failed. So my suggestion to young officers here is that you have a choice. That's the beauty of the IAS. In many services, you don't have a choice. Here you have a choice. Now, make that choice careful. Don't regret it later on. Don't say that I didn't make money. You have a choice to make money. But then if you get caught, as did two chief secretaries in UP, then don't say that the system is bad. The easiest thing is to blame the system for everything. My dear friend, you can't do anything through the system. उम्र भर यही भूल करता रहा गालिब, दूध चेहरे पे थी, आईना मलते रहिए. I said, if there were no examples of honest and efficient officers, I wouldn't be even talking about it here. But do we have the courage to look at such officers and discuss those officers and understand from them, how did Mr. Atul Mathur deliver what he delivered? Did he suffer in his service? He did, as would a dishonest officer. So there are problems both. It's not that it's an easy path for a dishonest officer, easy for a dishonest officer. Problems are everywhere. I get to come across somebody who hasn't faced problems in his career. But then the choice is yours. And I repeat saying that the beauty is that the IAS officer has a choice. If he doesn't exercise that choice, he should not be blaming a Neta or somebody else. It's his own choice and he suffers for it. He would suffer if he's honest, he would suffer if he's dishonest. Now, second point I'd like to, why I say that honesty is, because I keep saying, of course, these guys are just joined the service, your true worth will be determined after you retire. Not now. Now you are a district magistrate or collector, everyone will come and say, Saab, aapse sarkari na aaya na aayega. And you'll feel great about it. And you'll feel a collector all the time on the word, and suddenly when you retire, you're nobody. If you are grounded, and if you've delivered, if you've connected with people, if you made friends, you can sit down and write books, and people will come to listen to you. And you are nobody.
I'm glad you mentioned the honesty base, because that is something that keeps everybody in a dilemma. But moving from
Sorry, Mugdha, since you use this term dilemma, let me expound on this part of dilemma, because dilemma is a choice, you know, whether I idhar jaun ya udhar jaun, that famous song, that's the dilemma. You know, I have, again, this is not to embarrass some of those sitting here, and they're sitting in this audience. I hardly found Satish ever in a dilemma. He knew what he had to do. Here's the consequence. How did he do that? I took some time. I took about 8-10 years when the objective dilemmas existed, but my dilemmas existed till then. But thereafter, my dilemmas also see. I was very clear in my mind what I had to do. Absolutely clear. And I was prepared for the consequences. Not once in my career of 38 years did I go to any politician for any favor whatsoever. And I got the best posting that a civil servant should think of. Because when I look at Satish, Atul, these are guys, and I'm glad they're sitting here. It's not that they were always very happy. They were always satisfied with things around them. I mean, who could be always satisfied? Give me one person, no. But they knew what they had to do. Ye karna hai, ye main kar raha hu. And I face the consequences. Dilemma is your inability to decide. And that comes from your own internal dilemma, not external dilemma. If internally you are clear-headed, clear in mind, as I was, whether as coal secretary, because I mean, I distinctly remember when I was coal secretary, I rang up a friend of mine and asked him, "Yaar, this sector kaisa hai?" Usne kaha, "Gangs of Wasseypur dekhi hai kya?" But what do? That is an objective reality. You can't do much about it, but you can do a lot to yourself. And I keep saying, and that's the last couplet of my book, Dilemmas, where I say, "खुद ही कुकर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है?" Why can't we do that? And we have a mind. I keep repeating this to the youngsters here. We have such officers in the service. You know, I have given in my third book 25 of the many case studies of civil servants. They are, of course, not government alone, who done remarkably well despite this set of circumstances. How did they do it? We don't even look at those case studies. You know, I'm very fond of Twitter. I tweet. All the positive stories I tweet, there are only few people looking at it. The negative story, any criticism, everyone likes it. Because we like masala. So the problem is not with somebody else, problem is with me. So you have to look into it.
No, thank you so much for the clarification. My question actually emerges from your clarification that you have given, and which is that while it's easy for individuals to make a choice about the kind of ethics that they like to bring, not just to work but life, because I always believe that your livelihood is just a small portion of your entire life, and you cannot pinch the whole attitude or perspective of your life based only on the 38 or 40 years that you served in the service. You were a human being earlier, you will remain a human being earlier. The kind of ethics that you bring will always remain important. But moving from individual ethics, and that is why some officers will always do well, be honest, have integrity, and be non-pliable and still deliver. But sir, you are a person who believes in institutionalizing. You have worked in some of the best institutions at the highest echelons of power, be it the CMO where you were assisting several chief ministers, in the office and even when you were outside the office, you were delivering advice. You have worked in the cabinet secretary. You have been closely associated with the PMG, the Prime Minister's monitoring group for clearance of projects in the Prime Minister's office. You've seen things from the inside. Please tell us all how an individual in the center of things, with the kind of degradation that is happening all around, bring their individual ethics with short tenures at the wings, be able to institutionalize that ethos, and what message would you want to give to both individuals and institutions for taking this leadership, training, and mentorship for all of us so that what we believe individually can also become institutionalized?
See, there are two things that are very, very important. You must understand the limitations within which we work. That is why I keep finding officers blaming politicians for everything. And I keep asking my colleagues, did any politician ask you to come late to the office? No, sir. Then why do you come late to the office? Did any politician ask you to keep your office dirty? Then why do you keep your office dirty? Did any politician ask you to be abrasive or impolite towards people who come to meet you? No, sir. Then why are you so impolite to people? And I can go on and on and on. And I discovered that 95% of things, the politician doesn't matter at all. There are 5-7%. भाई इतना तो नहीं कि democracy को तो हम 5-6% पे चिपके रहते हैं 95% नहीं करते. That's one. Second, there is a monk based out of US or was named Reinhold Niebuhr. He said, "Lord, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change things that I can, and the wisdom to understand the difference between the two." I repeat this in front of most of the civil servants. You know why? There is a reason. I keep telling them, यार देखो अगर revolutionary तुम्हें बनना है तो झाड़ू पकड़ के पार्टी political party बना लो या ज्वाइन कर लो. अगर आपको civil service में रहना, you have to live in that discipline. You can't make revolutionary statement. Be a fast revolutionary, but don't make revolutionary. If you have this in your mind here, you will not be frustrated. Here, people are trying to change the world without changing themselves, and that's the third point I want to bring. The old man, the great man said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." So हम तो अपने आप को change नहीं करेंगे, दुनिया भर को गाली देंगे, उसको change करने में लगे रहेंगे. So if you start yourself, you will create an aura around you where people who associate with you will start transforming slightly. It won't happen overnight. It takes a time. It takes a lot of time. You know, I'm still in touch with most of my colleagues who work with me, and I'm so glad Mr. Savaria has come all the way from Ajmer to attend this discussion here. I mean, only he knows why he comes here from Ajmer today. There must be some reason. So you create that aura around you where people start understanding the value of approach that you're adopting. That's very important. So as you had asked earlier, ethics can't be taught. It has to be imbibed. And I keep telling the academy about it, but they don't seem to be listening, that instead of teaching or having a paper in the IAS doesn't make you ethical. But if it is demonstrated to officers like the ones that are sitting here, that ethical people succeed in life, probably they will start thinking in terms of following an ethical path. Merely telling them ethics is good is nonsense. You have to demonstrate that an ethical officer succeeded in life, succeeded in service, is being quoted, and hence they would probably think in terms of becoming ethical. So the approach has to be demonstration rather than gyan. And that's why I keep saying I don't have gyan to offer. I can offer a Satish Mehta, Atul Mathur, Rakesh Jain, people sitting here. These are the people who led a particular life. They may not be successful in the context, some other context, but I interacted with them. In fact, day before yesterday, I discovered another trait of a friend of mine. He's an excellent accomplished shair and a kavi, Atul Mathur. I didn't know that. And I know now why he's so cool and he continues to do what he's doing. He isn't bothered about the world. He's doing what he's doing. He's happy with himself. That's what ultimately is. आपके चीफ मिनिस्टर आज खुश हो जाए और दूसरे चीफ मिनिस्टर नाराज हो जाए, कुछ नहीं, तो आना जाना लगा रहता है. If you are at peace with yourself, which I think he is, because he's a poet, because he's a shair, that's what it is. So you have to make your own choice. I keep using this word. Make a choice. Make a conscious choice. I want to do this. We have somebody sitting in this audience. I'm sorry, I don't want to embarrass all of you. Mrs. Charan Dhillon. She runs a Bal Bhavan. You know, I had the occasion to visit when I was Secretary Education in 2017. I had occasion to visit it yesterday. What fabulous impact it is happening on children who nobody is looking after them, but there is an institution that is doing it. I seek inspiration then. People ask me, why do you visit this place? To seek inspiration. Because even as an old man, I'm looking at inspiration. Day before yesterday, I addressed audience of 5,000 children in JECRs. People ask me, why did you go there? To seek inspiration. That energy that you see in the youngsters play. So you can keep learning. My young friends who just went to service, you've not arrived actually. Your journey has just begun. Keep learning.
So having tasted the water and gained my confidence in this little engagement with you, I like to, with some amount of repetition, enter into a debate, because I know you are a debater and I'll be happy to lose the argument and continue to provoke this conversation. So when we talk of honesty and integrity and being successful, honesty pays, and it pays not just in terms of positions, but it also pays in terms of your growth. It pays because post-retirement, you will still have your network will become your net worth will be your network. My fundamental question, sir, is, and I might beg to differ on this, rather ask you, when you talk of success itself, the definitions can be many.
Absolutely.
And I'm restricting my question to the civil service, where success is fitted to be able to grab the most glamorous post. So my question to you is, should we not, instead of success, talk about the work that can also happen in non-successful, so-called, in the perception of people, postings that are non-successful? Because your work as a daily wager, I consider myself as a daily wager who goes to office and derives satisfaction from the amount of work I do on that particular day. So as a daily wager, should success not be defined by the value we bring to the work rather than the postings? Because ultimately that is why we have a sense of disconnection the moment we retire, because we are no more the IAS officers, but somebody else. I would like to see your views on that.
There is absolutely no debate. I totally agree with you what you say. Success is not determined by the position that you have. Success is determined by the value that you bring to that place. And that is why, if you have your mind in the right place, you will not hanker for such postings. You will be posted by, as I said, I never went to anybody for a posting. But if you create that post in a manner, there's a chapter in my book where I was made the managing director of an organization of a state financial corporation that was losing for past 7 years. Turning around that organization, it becomes a case study in institutes of management, and making it a profitable organization gave me enormous amount of satisfaction. So to me, success is not what others perceive as my success. Success is what I feel about that success, good within me. Extremely important. Day before yesterday, I was giving an example, totally different example. I've often wondered why people buy Mercedes car. Because वो खुद तो चलाता नहीं, वो ड्राइवर चलाता है. गाड़ी का संबंध ड्राइवर ले रहा है. आप पीछे सीट पे बैठे हैं. I have sat in a number of models of Mercedes car. It is very uncomfortable on the back, especially if you're used to sitting in a high seat. That's very uncomfortable. But it may be good. जब ये स्थिति वो खरीदता क्यों है? वो खरीदता है पड़ोसी के लिए. वो दुनिया को बताना चाहता है मेरे पास मर्सिडीज है. So if success is to prove to somebody else that you are succeeding, you are in trouble. You will keep proving others कि मैं successful नहीं. अगर यहाँ अच्छा लग रहा है, तो उससे अच्छा क्या हो सकता है? इससे बढ़िया कोई नहीं है. In my book, if you read, I have used the term Bharat Ratnas. I am a recipient of a number of Bharat Ratnas given to myself, and I must narrate one story to you, which probably you'll be able to relate. I was doing a scheme called Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, health insurance scheme, which has now morphed into Ayushman Bharat. Initially, we had a lot of problems in that scheme, but then it came to be recognized world over as one of the finest schemes in the world. Somebody is smiling because I did it in Labour Ministry, and Rakesh Jain used to clear my files. Publicly I'll say that. He sat on some of them, but he cleared it. So we used to get, initially we had problems, but thereafter there was a situation when the Joint Secretary Finance, one day before the budget, used to ring me up and ask me, Sir, how much do you want for this scheme? I got that money. But the story is different. When Mr. Obama became the president of the US, one of his advisors rang me up from US. He said, Mr. Swarup, can you come over to the US and make a presentation before our team here? I said, sir, my team has nothing to do with USA. It's a different context. What will I do? He insisted. So in one of the visits to Washington, where I used to go to interact with World Bank, I went over to Brookings Institute, an institute that houses advisors of the president. And there I made this presentation where representatives of our own mission in Washington were there. There were state government officials were there. There were also representatives of Gates Foundation and Rockefeller Foundation and other foundations. So after the presentation, we are having a cup of coffee outside. And this gentleman from Gates Foundation walks up to me and asks me, Mr. Swarup, you are a civil servant. What does the government give you beyond your salary to be so passionate about this thing? You know, many of us are very passionate. I was very passionate. So I thought for a moment, and then I asked him a counter question. I asked him, Gates Foundation gives billions of dollars to poor countries. What do you get out of it? He said, well, that's a job. But more than that, we derive a lot of satisfaction for the help that we give to the poor. So I said, you've answered your own question. Because Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana is meant for the poorest of the poor, many of whom would have been dead but for this scheme. So the good wishes of those that survive and their families come back to me somehow, anyhow. That's good enough a kick for me to do what I'm doing. And then I in this scheme, I used to visit these small hospitals that were empaneled, not Apollos and Maxes, small hospital. In one of the visits, I was talking to a beneficiary patient. Suddenly, I heard a very feeble voice. Now, this narration to that representative from Gates Foundation was in English, but I looked at in Hindi, but that's how this conversation happened. So I went to that lady, very old lady, she couldn't sit. Must have been around 90 years, very frail, and she was wearing that smart card. So I went to her and bent down and asked her, Mata ji, aap kaisi hain? She tells me, beta, मैं बहुत तकलीफ में हूँ, लेकिन इन अस्पताल वालों ने मेरा बड़ा ख्याल रखा है. फिर तो माता जी आप ठीक हो जाएंगे, अपने घर जाएंगी. बोले नहीं बेटा, मेरी तो उम्र इतनी हो गई, अब मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊँ. मैंने कहा नहीं माता जी, आप बिल्कुल ठीक हो जाएंगी. नहीं बेटा, मेरा कोई ना बेटा है ना भाई, कोई नहीं है मेरा दुनिया में. मैं तो भीख मांगती थी, बीमार पड़ गई. मेरा पड़ोसी वो भी भीख मांगता था, झोपड़ी में रहते थे. उसने तुम्हारा एक कार्ड देखा, मुझे अस्पताल में दिया. अस्पताल वाले मेरी सेवा कर रहे हैं, मुझसे पैसे भी नहीं मांगते, मेरे पास आएंगे नहीं. मैंने कहा नहीं माता जी, आपसे कोई पैसा नहीं देगा, आप ठीक होके जाएंगे. Now this conversation continued, but she insisted अब मैं ऊपर वाले के पास. I could dissuade her, and then she makes a remarkable statement. She says, ऊपर वाले जाके एक बार जरूर आऊंगी, तुम्हारी स्कीम बहुत अच्छी है. As I narrate this to you, I get goosebumps. These are my Bharat.
Absolutely, I also had goosebumps, sir. Policy making, sir, in this age of technology, and you have been one of the earliest to learn and imbibe. You mentioned about examples of officers from Haryana. You mentioned in your book so many officers that I have worked with and known personally, sir, who are from UP Tata, also from Government of India. It was very heartening. But moving from this whole very isolated, and Dr. Prabhat has mentioned that we are doing something on mental health. Today we live in an age where there's enhanced per mile connectivity. Everybody is connected. We are also moving to an age where machines will be talking to machines, of course, because human beings have stopped talking to human beings. So from edge to edge, we'll be moving to M, the Internet of Things. In this age of high enhanced connectivity, there's a huge amount of alienation and isolation which is happening. Put it in the context of the service, put it in the context of mentoring of junior officers, because we have a whole range of officers who are present, from the retired to the senior serving to the latest entrant in the service. This question becomes pertinent. You have spoken in all your 3 books in different ways, but probably in the last book with a lot of emphasis, because you've spoken about your batchmates, the peer-to-peer learning, the peer-to-peer collaboration, which is also something that is dying, not just the vertical collaboration and cooperation. We all work in silos, so it's a very common statement. Please talk a little about how you were able to build this collaboration with officers across, that you are so popular, not just with your peers, that you have the largest of the heart to mention people across the civil service, across the civil society. How were you able to establish, given the fact that there's always limitation of time, limitation of effort, the willingness to take time? Talk a little about this, and also please give us actionable points, because I know you are not in favor of writing policies, big drafts, but you believe in SOPs. So we are looking today for at least 3 actionable points which will tell us that this is how people can move beyond individual credit taking and come together, collaborate together as departments to launch schemes and have a more aerial perspective.
I'm so glad that you raised this as an issue. To my young friends sitting here, my suggestion to them is there's a lot of distrust in the society. And I don't blame the society for it. Let the society be damned. But if you start trusting people around you, now it's difficult. It's very difficult to distrust people, because if you have evolved as an individual who distrusts everyone around you, then there is a problem. But if you start trusting people, that's the first formula for making your own life easy. People will misuse your trust, but even if you distrust them, they're going to misuse you. It doesn't help anyone. Start trusting. How does it help? When you start trusting people, you start looking at individuals not as perfect individuals. So every individual has some positive and negative traits. I'm yet to come across somebody who's totally perfect. So the job of a leader, which all of you would be or may already be, is to assess each individual. You know, in each of my assignments, the first 3 months I used to slog it out with individuals, with smaller groups, with larger groups, and after 3 months, I was perhaps the only Secretary Government of India. I was there for 4 years to leave the office at 6 o'clock dot, even as Fourth Secretary. And people used to wonder, some may galat fahmi thi main bahut kaam karta hu nahi. Once you trust a person and once you know that person, you start delegating. You start empowering them. You know, I have heard a lot of my colleagues, secretaries to Government of India, complaining, यार मेरे साथ तो सब बेकार है, सब काम मुझे ही करना पड़ता है. मैं उनसे कहता तुमसे बड़ा गधा कोई नहीं. क्यों करते हो काम यार? काम कराओ ना. यार वो करता ही नहीं है. मैंने कहा यार तुम्हारी आर्ट तो इसी में से काम करो. आर्ट इसमें नहीं कि वो ड्राफ्ट बना के ला रहा है टीओ का और आप उसको रात को 8 बजे करेक्ट करो. No. I will teach him how to draft a letter properly. If I have to spend 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, I'll do that. But let him do that. So that's the point number 3. You have to delegate. Trust, understand the individual, delegate. Then you will have time for planning and institution building. You raised a very important point. The question is not you doing good. Question is creating institutions that outlast you. You know, in coal, what we created in 2015 is valid 7 years down the line. Even today, I'm not there. In fact, I went to PMO in 2016 and told them to wind up the coal ministry. They were shocked. As Secretary Government of India, you want to wind up a department? I said, if you keep me there, I will create a problem or some problems to justify my existence. We have created institutions, you don't need coal ministry at all. Wind it up, attach it to mines ministry as it was earlier, and that's it. Why should you have that? So the 4th point is, once you've delegated, once you've empowered, then you'll have time to create institutions. Now, you may succeed sometimes, you may fail sometimes. That's a different matter. Like, for example, Rashtriya Swarup Mayota. And I'm sorry to say that 3 of my own colleagues, secretaries to Government of India, dumped that scheme. They just dumped it. They didn't know anything about insurance, they dumped it. 3 years, and let me take some time to explain this to you. 3 years after the present government came to power, when I was close to retirement, and I was Secretary Education, I was to retire in June. In March, I get a call from the Prime Minister's office, Principal Secretary asking me to come and explain to the Prime Minister health insurance. So I told him, sir, I'm Education Secretary. No. पिछले 3 साल से, I've written that in my book. पिछले 3 साल से हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं, हम लोग सफल नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, आप आके समझाइए. तो मैंने कहा मेरा लोकल स्टैंड है क्या है? बोले ऐसा है, शाम को हेल्थ का रिव्यू है, हम एजुकेशन का भी रख देते हैं. आप मजा देखिए. As coal secretary, I met the PM almost every month. As coal secretary, I met the PM every month. As education secretary, there was no time for education. It was in the context of health that I met the Prime Minister. Late in the evening, health secretary makes a presentation. Prime Minister is again angry. अरे आप लोग समझते नहीं क्या? हमको बता देते हैं. Then he turns towards me and say, अनिल आप रहे हैं, मुझे आप बताइए. मैं हल्का सा दुख हो रहा था क्योंकि मैं भी वही कहने जा रहा था जो हेल्थ सेक्रेटरी ने कहा. मेरा आइडिया वही था. तो मैंने बोलना शुरू किया. Now, Prime Minister is a very keen listener. For 15 minutes यूं करके सुनते रहते. और 15 मिनट बाद मैंने कंप्लीटेड माय जॉब, ही सेड अनिल जी आप सही कह रहे हैं। तो एक जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी प्राइम मिनिस्टर का बैठा था, वो ही ऑलमोस्ट फेल ऑफ द चेयर, मैंने केम आउट, ही आस्क्ड मी सर आपको तो पता था नाराज हो रहे आपने बोले क्यों? मैंने कहा देखो यार इनसे ना मुझे आज कुछ चाहिए ना रिटायरमेंट के बाद कुछ चाहिए, जो मैंने ठीक समझा बता दिया, नहीं समझते नहीं समझते। So the point that I'm trying to reach here is, if you have a good idea, if you create an institution, even if your colleagues, some of them want to destroy it, they won't be able to destroy it. Today, Ayushman Bharat is a living example of a good idea for
that without any thoughts that what you leave as a legacy is what you do and the value that you bring to your work. My last question, sir, and then we throw it open to the audience because I realize that Prabhatji is checking his watch. There's this whole issue about messaging and deriving mileage out of it, because we live in this time of social media, and thankfully governments allow civil servants to be a part of the social media as a channel of dissemination. But then, of course, there's the underbelly of technology as well. And since we have a lot of young civil servants who will be again in a dilemma of to do or not to do. So my question is with that, you have very successfully in your stint as the Secretary Education handled a very, very difficult time. And this also relates, people in Rajasthan will be able to resonate because we have paper leakages, examinations that we faced in many states. You have mentioned, because this is a running theme, because when you were in the field, your driver had taken you to show the nazara of how people were jumping out of windows in an examination center. You mentioned the Chief Minister who took cudgels against this as a politician, knowing that it would impact his constituency. So we also have a political executive realizing the importance of this. And then you as secretary stood up. I want to specifically mention this because I have also met Anita ma'am and I know her, and I know the kind of things that happened in CBSC at that point in time and how brilliantly you stood up for an officer. And my respect to you for that, sir, because at that level of seniority, putting your own self at risk, you had the courage and the daring to stand up for something which was right. I would like you to tell us in this context, you can also share the incident, but in this context, what tips, if I can say, would you like to give to all of us who are currently in the service? Also, they are members of the media, because we are dealing with very diverse kind of people in terms of knowledge, in terms of outlook, also in terms of the value systems, if I may say. How should we negotiate this increasingly difficult terrain, which has a mix of technology, mix of business, mix of what Lord Palmerston said, permanent interests and not permanent enemies or permanent friends, and of course this whole climate, huge canvas of social media.
You know, first of all, social media is like nuclear energy. You can use it, you can misuse it. If you understand the difference between dissemination and publicity, there will be no dilemma whatsoever. I have been advising all my colleagues, use the social media to disseminate, not publicize your own achievements. Unfortunately, I see many youngsters, they are holding a meeting and they have it on social media. They are cutting a lal pita, they have it on social media. What are you trying to tell? I mean, you don't have to blow your own trumpet. Your trumpet will be blown, I can assure you. But let somebody else blow that trumpet. Use social media. You know, when I was doing this coal auctions, and I used to keep awake till late of night because people used to ring me up. So one day my son asked me, "क्या कर रहे हैं?" Coal block auction चल रहा है, लोग फोन करता हूँ, तो बताता हूँ क्या रेट है. अरे उसको ट्वीट कर दीजिए. मैंने कहा ट्वीट क्या होता है? So he explained to me what Twitter is. I started doing it, and to phenomenal amount of success. So much so, India Today came up with a caption with my photograph, the Twitter secretary, because I was using Twitter. What was I doing? I was disseminating it further. Please try and understand this. Now I can think of publicity. I'm out. But as serving officers, my advice to them is don't use social media to publicize your own achievement, unachievement, the achievement, or whatever. Don't do that. That brings us all into our life that we are trying to show off. You will be shown off. If you do good work, you will get to be shown. Don't worry about it. Even if they don't, so be it. You're doing it for the good feeling that you have inside. But my experience tells me that if you do good work, it gets to be known over a period of time. So social media is a double-edged weapon. Use it carefully, otherwise you could be in trouble. I see many officers getting into trouble, and for very simple reason. So if you have clarity of thought here, you will not have problem. Problem arises if you don't have clarity of thought. Unfortunately, and I'm digressing a bit, and I've written a chapter on this. UPSC selects brilliant individuals. It doesn't select brilliant leaders, whereas it can. Some of us accidentally become good leaders. That's a different matter. But UPSC cannot take the credit of selecting leaders. And that is why, and I'm sorry, we don't have an ethos in the civil service. They're all individuals, fighting their battles alone, taking the credit alone. If you are leaders, you will never take the credit, give it to somebody else. But we don't do that. Now, how do we correct that? And I'm again digressing a bit. We had discussed it. I'm going around the country now. I visited, on an invitation from the IAS Association, I visited Chhattisgarh, I visited Andhra Pradesh, I visited Madhya Pradesh, I'm visiting other states also, where I'm suggesting evolve a mentorship program where identify good senior officers who can mentor individuals. Because what is happening is because of the attractions or distractions that we have today, many of us are falling. Now, if in the initial stages of their career, the mentor calls him over a cup of tea and tells him, which I do quite often, "Yeah, तुम्हारे बारे में I don't know, ठीक हो, क्या बात कर रहे हैं, सुन." But इतना काफी. You don't have to do anything beyond that. Just hint. You will get at least 25 to 30% officers back on your track by ignoring it. And why do we ignore it? यार मैं क्यों, मेरा थोड़ी ना काम यार, अपना भुगतेगा वो. अब जब ये अगर attitude है तो ethos नहीं है. And I often say that both the academy and everyone is talking of expertise. I said nonsense. Absolutely. Why are you making these officers experts? Expertise can be outsourced, but attitude cannot be outsourced. So focus on thinking that attitude. They don't listen to me. हर जना कहता है specialist लाओ. अरे specialist क्या कर लेगा? As you go up the ladder, I've seen it. You have to manage men and women. You don't have to be an expert in that area. I didn't know anything about coal. If I had known about coal, I would be telling chairman, ऐसे खोदो, ऐसे क्यों खोद रहे हो? मेरा काम है कोल खोदना. I used to tell him, ये तुम्हारा रोल है, environment का management मैं करूंगा क्योंकि I can interact with state government. That's how you define roles. But what we do is आजकल सब expert बनाने हैं. ऊपर से लेके my own colleagues tell the PM, हाँ सब experts लाइए. अरे भाई expert क्या कर लेगा secretary? आप expertise किस चीज में लाएंगे? Budget के expertise को secretary बनाएंगे, finance का बनाएंगे, insurance का, banking का, किस expert को लाएंगे आप? No, you should have domain knowledge, but not an expert. You can have domain knowledge. अगर UPSC से have domain knowledge आ जाए, but ये attitude कहाँ से आएगा? Again, full chapter on how to develop that attitude. And we can actually develop that attitude. आप समरिया साहब से किस दिन पूछिए बताएंगे क्या करते थे? I used to spend time with officers, demonstrate to them that this attitude will be helpful to you, to the organization, to everyone. No, instead of saying that honest होना चाहिए, ये करना चाहिए, no. Demonstrate. Nothing better than demonstration. Then people start imbibing those qualities. It can never be taught. It can't be taught. It can't be learned. It has to be imbibed through demonstration. So all this discussion might give you an impression that all the time I'm the field. No, I don't have time. But there were occasions when I was absolutely down and out. I remember there was a case when a very dishonest minister wanted me to suspend an honest officer. And he was legally authorized to do that. I was so distraught that the Kali in me came out and I composed these lines. And since my friend poet is sitting here, he will appreciate it. संशय नहीं मन में तेरी सृष्टि ने या तुझ में. संशय नहीं मन में तेरी सृष्टि ने या तुझ में. तू ही तू मेरे मन में समाया, सब कुछ मैंने तुझसे पाया. फिर भी स्तब्ध हूं, व्याकुल हूं, अशांत हूं, शायद अनजान हूं. क्या यही जीवन है? जो पापी है, दुराचारी है, क्यों जीत रहा निरंतर है? स्पष्ट करो, अभिव्यक्त करो, कुछ तो करो मेरे राम. तो मैंने अपनी वेदना पूरी राम की झोली में डाली। If you are the die-hard optimist, which I was, the answer will come to you in a flash. It came like this, and it's there, I think, in all three of my books. समय रुका नहीं, हम क्यों ठहर गए? समय रुका नहीं, हम क्यों ठहर गए? अभी तो हम चले भी नहीं, फिर क्यों थक गए? उठो पथिक, मत भ्रमित हो, तुम मिल अंधियारे में, श्रेष्ठ वही जो घिरा नहीं हो क्षणिक निराशा में। जागो, जगाओ, मन मत बहलाओ, एक मसीहा तुम भी बन जाओ। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much, sir. And I feel that you must also come out with your next book, which will not so much be what Chanakya says, which can wait, but all the Hindi shero shairi that you've written deserves to be out in the public. Thank you so much for raising a very, very pertinent question while you were answering the last about the depth of expertise, because this is exactly what is happening, and this is exactly how collaboration, transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach to problem solving will enable officers with the ability to connect dots and to have an aerial picture to be able to bring about resolution of problems of society. I'm extremely glad, sir. The time is short. I have only 30 minutes to do this conversation, and we definitely want to hear the audience ask you questions, because I have only painted the whole conversation with very, very broad strokes given the limitation of time, but I'm sure officers here and the civil society in general will have many more questions to ask you. But let me end with a lot of gratitude to you, sir, and to everybody sitting here in the audience for giving us this opportunity of doing this conversation with you, for your phenomenal penmanship that you bring not just to your work, but the work that you have retired, but probably you have not got tired of institutionalizing and inspiring us from the work that you have done, from the body of work that you have built. Socrates said, and because somebody in the various blurbs has called Sir Thucydides, so let me say that Socrates said something very interesting, that you must always live a life which is worth recounting. Writing a book comes from being able or having lived a life that is worthy of getting translated in a book. So my compliments and congratulations to you, sir. With one little anecdote, inspired of course by sir, I will end with a lot of gratitude and thanks to everyone here. There was a drunkard man who had two sons, and the sons grew up. The elder son became a phenomenal corporate business person. The youngest son became a drunkard. The journalist, they were twins, the journalist goes and asks the one who was the more famous, the more successful one, how did you become successful? So he says that because my father was a drunkard, I learned not to be him. And that is why I'm successful. They went to his other younger twin brother and asked him, "Sir, how did you end up like this?" So he says, "I saw my father and became a drunkard." So we will see the same person, but as Anil Swarup has said, we will imbibe different things from it. We will see the system, we will see the degradation, but choose whether we want to be the senior son or we want to be the younger son. I hope you can carry this message, because this is exactly the gist of all the books that sir has written, and not just written, he's lived a life. He's the person personified in the books and in the things that he writes. So thank you very much, but I open this hall now for discussion and raising questions. I hope you are bolder than me in asking more incisive questions, and if somebody would like to know more about the nexus of good, I'll be happy, so we'll be happy to answer that. Please raise your hand so that we can ask you or send the mic across to you.
Morning, sir. I am R.S. Meena, Railway Officer. I met you during the Saptanishta program conducted by Northwestern Railway. My son is working in MSTC handling coal auction, and he is really appreciating your things you have done during your coal secretary. तो आप सर हमें ये बता दें कि आपने जो इतना बड़ा एक बड़ा भारत पे छाया हुआ था कि कोल मिनिस्ट्री में स्कैम हुआ, ये हुआ, और आपने इमीडिएटली कोल सेक्रेटरी का चार्ज लिया था, तो उस सिचुएशन को कैसे हैंडल किया?
जब मैं कोल सेक्रेटरी के ऑफिस में गया अंदर, तो मुझे ऐसा लगा मैं आई एम वॉकिंग इनटू अ ग्रेवयार्ड, क्योंकि सीबीआई वाज आफ्टर ऑफिसर्स, दे वर आफ्टर फाइल्स एंड थिंग्स वर टेरेबल। बट मेरे दिमाग में ख्याल है यार इतना खराब है और खराब तो होगा नहीं, अब जो भी होगा अच्छा ही होगा, सब क्रेडिट मैं ले लूंगा। So first thought was that optimistic thought, and then God has been very kind to me. I had an amazing team with me, absolutely amazing. हम लोग जब वहाँ बैठते थे राउंड टेबल पे तो कहते थे हमें कश्मीर प्रॉब्लम दे दो, वो भी सॉल्व कर देंगे। And as luck would have it, one of my joint secretary is presently Home Secretary Government of India, and the other joint secretary is Additional Secretary Jammu and Kashmir. They are solving the problem. वो अक्सर बात करते थे, कहते सर आपने तो मजाक में कहा था, हमें बना दिया, आज मुसीबत में फंसे हुए हैं। So the point that I am trying to make here is, in most of the cases, the situations given to you are not created, at least to a civil servant. You get given a situation. Now you can either become a part of the problem, or you can think solutions to the problem. You should have the humility to accept the fact, probably you may not find all the solutions. And if you have that approach, you will start gradually finding solutions to some problems, step by step. And that gives you enormous confidence to take on the bigger problem. Then more confidence to take up the bigger. Normally what happens is, as I keep saying, we try to revolutionize things. No. So what we did was, and that's there in my chapter, because the real coal story is not coal block. The real coal story is increasing in coal production. That's the full chapter in that. So for finding solution to any problem, and to my young friends sitting here, you must go into the why of a problem. Why did that problem exist? So in coal, we were sitting on 300 billion tons of coal, and we were producing only around 700 million tons. हमारी जरूरत अगर 1 billion ton की है, तो we short of all this. So we said, why can't we produce more coal with so much coal? Then we get to the next layer of the problem. That for production of coal, you require land, you require environment clearance, and you require evacuation from it. Since you are in railways, you will understand that. So then we started finding solution to these, went to the next layer, and I discovered that most of these problem solutions are in the states. Tragedy was and is today that all these coal blocks are in opposition to states. और यहाँ तो गोलियां चल रही हैं सेंटर स्टेट में, तो आप समान समाधान कैसे करें? So I used to go down to the state. During 2 years as coal secretary, I did not convene a single meeting in Delhi. Probably the only secretary that. All meetings were held in the states, and I used to tell the chief secretary, "यार इनको लड़ने दो, हमें अपना काम करो यार. Let's sit down and how do we find solution to the problem?" Again, I'm making it very simplistic, but that's precisely what I did. As luck would have it, from gross scarcity of coal, when we were in serious crisis, we were toying with the idea of exporting coal from Bangladesh. That's the story laid down in the real coal story. Well, the next question is, why is the crisis now? That's probably in some of my articles later on.
I'm hoping to see more hands, unless.
Yes. There's the lady. Yes. That teacher has a mic.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Isha Sharma. I am from Jaipuria Institute. Sir, my question is, have you ever faced any corrupt political pressure from upper side, and if yes, then how did you handle it?
Oh, wonderful! I did. I mean, politicians, some of them are really corrupt. I gave an example of a minister who wanted me to suspend a deputy director, and he was honest and efficient. When I called that officer, और वो क्यों suspend? उन्होंने मुझे क्या कारण बताया मंत्री ने? मुझसे बोले मुझसे मिलने नहीं आया. हमने कहा बहुत छोटी चीज है, अभी बुला के कहते मैं बुलाया सबसे. वो कहता सर मैं उनसे कई बार मिल चुका हूँ, लेकिन जैसे वो मिलना चाह रहे मैं नहीं मिल पा रहा. So there was a corrupt politician asked me to do it. So what do? There is a legitimate order. There is an honest officer. How do I say it? So I keep telling my colleagues, know your rules very well when you take on a politician. So I got to know of a rule that if I disagreed with the minister, I could route the file to the chief secretary. So I spoke to the chief secretary, a very fine officer. He may have been otherwise, but I was lucky he was a nice fine officer. I spoke to him, told him the details. बोले अनिल फाइल भेज दो, फिर देखते हैं क्या किया। फाइल मैंने भेज दी उनको। अब मंत्री हमसे पूछे फाइल का, मैंने कहा मुख्य सचिव को भेज दी। तो जब कुछ दिन हो गए तो मंत्री got frustrated, he went and met the chief minister, and I don't know what transpired between them. I was transferred out. Now, but the officer was not suspended. Now the chief secretary got annoyed with me, called me, क्या तुम उसको बचाने के चक्कर में तुम्हारा ट्रांसफर हो गया। मैं साहब क्यों परेशान होते हैं? For a civil servant transfer is like death. It is inevitable. जो होना उसके लिए परेशान क्या होना? और वैसे भी I believe in Hindu philosophy. I'll be reborn. You'll post me somewhere. मैं वो पाप वहाँ फिर करूँगा, उसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम? So the issue is your approach to issues. Transfer was not in my control. I did not create a situation every time. You know, we have officers जो कहते हैं मेरे 40 बार ट्रांसफर हुए, यहाँ लग के चलते हैं। मैं उनसे कहता हूँ यार कुछ इंट्रोस्पेक्ट करो, क्यों हो रहे हैं ट्रांसफर? सब उसकी गलती नहीं हो सकता, तुम्हारी गलती हो। There is a chapter in my book where I write, some of the honest officers think that the rest of the world is dishonest, and that's where the problem is. For them it is honesty full stop. ना करते हैं ना करने देते हैं। खाने की बात करते नहीं, काम ही नहीं करते। तो कोई काम करेंगे तो गड़बड़ हो जाएगा। तो फिर आपको पैसा सरकार किस लिए देती है? काम करने के लिए देती है। ऑनेस्ट तो आपको होना ही है। Honesty is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. So there are a number of cases, but you know the good news is that over a period of time I developed a reputation that no one, even a politician, came after I think 15 years of my career. No one came गलत काम के लिए नहीं आया। सिर्फ एक बंदा आया, उसका भी मैंने रेफरेंस दिया अपनी किताब में। पूरी अपने 20 साल के करियर में उसके बाद सिर्फ एक बंदा खुद सेक्रेटरी आया और इस सर जरा इसको कर दीजिए। नहीं तुम्हें पता है गलत है, तुम तो मित्र हो उनके, क्यों कराना चाह रहे हो? नहीं सर मेरा हजारों करोड़ का नुकसान हो। मैंने कहा हजारों करोड़ का नुकसान हो गए तो मुझसे और उनसे दोनों से गलत काम कराओ। नहीं सर प्लीज भेज दीजिए। कुछ नहीं हुआ, मेरा फिर ट्रांसफर हो गया, चले गए इमेजिन सेक्रेटरी बन के, क्या फर्क पड़ता है?
Namaskar, sir. Like recently, we all have seen that Twin Tower is demolished in Noida. Who are involved in this? Bureaucrats or someone others? If bureaucrats are involved in this, तो इतना टाइम क्यों लगता है सर जस्टिस आने में?
I am informed that FIR has been registered against all the civil servants. I will go into such a news item. And to my mind, strictest of action should be taken against such civil servants. Strictest of action. ऐसा exemplary action हो कि आगे आदमी सोचे दोबारा उसको करने के लिए। So अभी तो physical demolition हुआ है। I think such officers should also be demolished to set an example that no other officer does that again. डिले तो सरकार में कोई भी चीज करने में अगर आप जल्दबाजी में करेंगे तो वो बच निकलेगा। You know, एक मैं आपको उदाहरण दूं, जब मैं उस स्टेट फाइनेंशियल कॉर्पोरेशन में था जिसकी मैं बात कर रहा हूँ, नुकसान कर रहा था, तो उसको ठीक करने के लिए मैंने सबसे करप्ट जनरल मैनेजर को चर्चा के लिए बुलाया। I called him over a cup of tea. आज की तारीख में तो चाय पे चर्चा करते हैं, हमने चाय पे। आप पूछिए क्यों बुलाया करप्ट को? करप्ट को इसलिए बुलाया कि जितने करप्ट जो जेल के बाहर है वो होशियार होते हैं। क्या मैं उनकी होशियारी किसी और काम के लिए लगा सकता हूं? तो मैंने उससे कहा, जब आए चर्चा के लिए, मैंने कहा बताओ यार इस संस्था में कुछ बचा तो है नहीं, तो चूस हो गया। You know, no matter how corrupt you are, you never admit to corruption. भाई इतने लोग बैठे हुए, पूछा कितने लोग करप्ट है, जरा हाथ उठाइए। तो देश में इतना करप्शन है, कोई करप्ट नहीं है यहाँ पे, कैसे देश कैसे करप्ट है? अभी भी समाज में ऐसी व्यवस्था है कि लोग समझते हैं कि हम ऑनेस्ट दिखें, ठीक है ना, तो उसने एडमिट नहीं किया। मैंने कहा अच्छा बीती तारीख विसार दे आगे की सुन ले, सब जानते थे वो करप्ट है। मैंने कहा यार ऐसा है कि देखो मुझे इस संस्था को सुधारना, तो मेरे साथ हेल्प करो रिकवरी में। अब कट लॉन्ग स्टोरी शॉर्ट, लॉन्ग स्टोरी तो किताब में है। उसने काम शुरू किया और इतना बढ़िया काम किया कि संस्था बिकेम प्रॉफिटेबल। जब प्रॉफिटेबल हो गई तो कोई मेरे साथ ही आना चाहते थे मेरी जगह, मेरा ट्रांसफर हो गया। उन दिनों यूपी में सिर्फ ट्रांसफर इंडस्ट्री चलती थी, तो ट्रांसफर हो गया, कर कोई चिंता नहीं। मैंने इस अधिकारी का ट्रैक रखा यार इसका क्या हाल है, तो लोग कहते सर वो तो अब ये पैसा देता है ना देता है, लगा रहता है काम में। तो मैंने फिर बुलाया उसे चाय, मैंने कहा तुम्हारी बड़ी तारीफ करते हैं लोग, तुम्हारा हृदय परिवर्तन कैसे हुआ? तो कहता है सर जब आप 300 अफसर के सामने मेरी पीठ दबा के कहते थे उनके सामने इस संस्था में जो सुधार हो रहा है इसकी वजह से हो रहा है, सर मेरी छाती चौड़ी हो जाती थी और जो चीज मुझे उस समय मिलती थी पहले कभी। Now, this is a success story. There are failure stories in my book. There are phases in which I failed. सो भी इट यार, कर्मण्यवाधिकार अस्ते मां फलेषु कदाचन। यार फेल तो हो सकते हैं, हो जाएंगे, लेकिन प्रयास तो करेंगे ना। जस्ट बिकॉज आई फेल हम प्रयास ही ना करें। इस केस में सक्सेसफुल रहा, the organization turned around, it made profits. So it's a question of how you deal with your team. No, I don't call myself 100% honest. Some people are 90% honest, some people are 70% honest. The job of a leader is to appeal to the good sense of the people that you have. In government, the problem is that you can't keep shifting. Private sector से जब बात करते हैं, कहते हैं यार आप इसको ना पसंद करते हो निकालते, तो हम तो नहीं निकाल सकते। मैंने एक दिन कहा, मिस्टर बजाज इज नो मोर, द फेमस इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट, एक डिबेट में खड़े हुए सब अधिकारियों का इधर नहीं करते, वो करते। मैंने कहा कि मेरी जगह बैठ गया, आप करेंगे काम, मैं आपकी संस्था में जाके उतना अच्छा नहीं तो काफी अच्छा काम कर लूंगा, आप भाग खड़े होंगे। फिर मैंने कहा आप एयर इंडिया से भागे क्यों? दो चेयर से बोले एटमॉस्फेयर बड़ा स्ट्राइकलिंग था। मैंने कहा आपको चांद भागने में, मुझे आ रहा है काम करना है। So the point is, it's easy to sit down and criticize somebody else. I keep telling them, yes, there are problems, but a good officer, a good leader is who gets work from those very officers, because government में आप choose नहीं कर सकते जाते, आपको जो मिला मटेरियल उससे कीजिए, then you learn the art, and that is why you find a lot of civil servants who join private sector are extremely successful. Because मैं अब सेवा से बाहर आया हूँ और इतना आनंद आ रहा है मुझे, पहले कभी सोचता नहीं था। जब मैं I became an IAS officer because my father wanted me to become an IAS. After 38 years, I've written in my book in the last chapter, if I were to be born again, I'd like to be an IAS officer all over again. So I won't qualify, तो competition ज़्यादा है, लेकिन I would like to. Why? Because enormous amount of opportunities. यार कौन सी ऐसी सर्विस है इस देश में या दुनिया में जहां एफिशिएंट हो तो आप सेक्रेटरी गवर्नमेंट डिप्टी बन सकते हैं, इनएफिशिएंट हो तो आप कैबिनेट सेक्रेटरी बन सकते हैं। कौन सी ऐसी सर्विस? But after retirement, I'm enjoying it even more. Yes.
I don't want to go into our official page, but I want to ask you something very personal.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you have been doing so good in your career and all this. But when you felt sick, when you were unwell, how did you face the life? That is something very
Okay.
different.
So there is a full chapter in my book on Back from the Brink. I survived because of my wife. Otherwise, I would have been dead. Now, as far as I was concerned, मेरा अप्रोच बड़ा सिंपल था। यार जब तक जीवित है तब तक I'll fire on all cylinders. जिस दिन जाना होगा चले जाएं। ये जो आप किताब देख रहे हैं जिसका चर्चा हो रही है, Nourished Civil Servant, was written when I was sick. I could barely sit for 15 minutes. So 15 मिनट में लिखता था कंप्यूटर पे, फिर रेस्ट करता था, So during that period, I mean, last year at this point in time, I wasn't even sure whether I'll be alive in the next 3-4 months. But by God's grace and probably the support that I got from friends like you and many others, I mean, I'm amazed at the response of the people. I didn't have to move a foot to get all my clearances, all my money that was spent, everything came just like that. And God has been very kind, friends have been very kind. Of course, I wouldn't have been here but for my family.
Thank you very much.
My question is regarding the basic system of bureaucracy. We have adopted the UK system where there is permanence in the bureaucracy. The US system has, with every president, he chooses his own bureaucracy. US is economy number 1, Britain is economy number 6. Do you see solution in the bureaucracy or general administration in the country, governance in the country, if we have very few permanent bureaucrats and leave it to the government to choose their own bureaucracy?
So before I start, just let me correct you factually. Yesterday, India overtook Britain as the number 6 wealthiest nation in the world. So
we are number 5 now.
Yeah, we are number 5. So, but that's not the issue. That's not the issue. The key point is whether we should have a bureaucracy as it exists in the US or whether we should have bureaucracy, because it is wrong to compare because British bureaucratic system is different from ours. So each country has to evolve in its own manner because of the peculiar set of circumstances. US economy is number 1 not because of its bureaucracy, despite its bureaucracy. So it's not bureaucracy is not responsible. We are unnecessarily giving so much importance to bureaucracy. And by the way, if I understand bureaucracy now, despite being a parliamentary form of government, we are moving towards the presidential form of government in bureaucratic context. So I don't think even that will help. The question is not of a system. You know, it's very easy to blame a system and get away with it because then the discussion becomes academic in nature. I'm a practitioner and I'm convinced that with the same system, if we reform a bit, which can be done and which has been demonstrated in some of the places, you can still do well. So since I travel a lot through the country and I see some of the states where bureaucracy is actually functioning. In state like UP, I distinctly remember in the year 91 and 92, the bureaucracy functions like a well-oiled machinery. So bureaucracy is the same countrywide, but in some places it works, in some places it doesn't work. There are problems. This is not to say there are no problems with bureaucracy, serious problems with bureaucracy. But to focus our discussion only on bureaucracy, you're overlooking the issues. And we can have an academic discussion what needs to be done. I look at it very simply by looking at states and organizations that have performed despite the existing bureaucracy. Of course, bureaucracy needs to be reformed, I keep saying. And again, if you read my book, I have given hints on what can be done to that. So what we really need to do is, and that's where, since he mentioned, let me bring in the nexus of good part. Since we are fond of masala, we only talk of negative things. I have tried to change that narrative into believing that what people like Madam Charan Dhillon are doing, what Satish Mehta is doing in terms of Jaipur food. I mean, this is something, these stories need to be told, where people understand that despite everything, there are good models functional. Can we learn from those models? और जहां तक बड़ी बात है वो तो बड़े लोगों को छोड़ दीजिए, बड़ी बड़ी बातें 2047 और 225 ये सब करेंगे, उनको करने दीजिए. हमारा आपका काम ये है कि आज की तारीख में हम क्या कर सकते हैं. What I as an individual can contribute to the improvement situation. बाकी सब तो एकेडमिक है कि ये होना चाहिए, वो होना चाहिए, होती रहती बात. मैं तो हमेशा इस चीज में विश्वास करता हूं. आप, I am the center of the universe. Let me see what I can contribute. Whatever it is. Let's start with that. क्योंकि आजकल सब जोश की बात कर रहे हैं, होश खो दे रहे हैं. हर जना नेशन की बात कर रहा है, अपना बात नहीं कर रहा. बड़ा आसान है, नेशन पे लटक जाओ, नीचे चलने दो धरती को. So I keep telling उन 5000 बच्चों को भी मैं कल ही बता रहा था, जोश की बात करो लेकिन होश में रहो यार. सिर्फ जोश में कब तक उस नशे में रहोगे यार. धरातल पर रहो. Try and determine for yourself what can you do. You know, it's very easy to discuss system में गड़बड़ है, अधिकारी गड़बड़ है, ये गड़बड़ है, वो गड़बड़ है. At each level, each individual in this room can contribute substantially in his own way to nation. Let's discuss that. Otherwise, तो ठीक है, चर्चा पर. प्लानिंग कमीशन पहले था, नीति आयोग. देखिए कितनी जोर का शेर दहाड़ा, मुझे कितने डिस्टेंस चला, कोई नहीं बता पाएगा. दहाड़ चल रही है, दहाड़ सकते हैं कहाँ तक.
If I can answer.
Yes.
Sure, sir. What I see is that more of information is available with the private sector now, and there are many giants who are actually knowing more than us, you and I, than the government. So what is going to be the second side of governance in this kind of view, and in times to come is going to accentuate. The government will have less information than the private sector.
See, your question presumes an adversarial role between public and private. Right through my career, I have myself experienced that there are outstanding people in the private domain, there are outstanding people in the government. The tragedy is that all the rascals and ruffians of the world have come together to make life difficult for us. Why can't good people come together, private, public and private? I have spoken about public-private partnership. I have worked on it. I have benefited from it. Whether in education or coal, we partnered with the private sector. So why do we treat as adversaries? There are good people on that side, good people on this side. Let's sit down. Let's discuss what can we do for the nation, for the organization that you do, and do it transparently. Because I distinctly remember I was made head of the project monitoring group in 2013 when scams were breaking out, and I was made head of the project monitoring group by the Prime Minister because he thought that I will be able to fast track projects. Each project was more than 1,000 crore. During the time of UPA 2, we managed to facilitate clearance of 5 lakh crores worth of projects. It's on record. How did we do that? By not doubting the private sector. Sit transparently, give decisions transparently. ऐसा नहीं कि as school secretary मुझसे गलतियां नहीं. Transparency, and youngsters are sitting here. If you use technology and make this transparent, you can save your backside. Because no malafide will attribute it to you if you are working transparently, even if you commit a mistake. If you push it on the carpet, you are in trouble. So my answer to your question is, instead of doubting the private sector, instead of competing with the private sector, let's sit in the private sector. If they have more information, you can define their domain. You can define your domain. You know, people used to ask me, "Aap to Secretary Government of India?" I am Principal Facilitator Government of India. My job is to enable. If I can do that, private sector will flourish, my team will flourish. But if I start doing everything, that's the problem with some of us. We want to do everything ourselves instead of becoming facilitators. And I loved it being a facilitator. कुछ करना वरना है नहीं, सिर्फ हेल्प करते रहो. आप भी आराम से, वो भी खुश.
Unfortunately, I mean, things are like, give you an example, a lot of places where we approach with merit, but they say, oh, you are private sector, you want to give the grant.
You are absolutely correct. No, let's try and understand. There is a giver, there is a receiver. Public-private. Now, I can't help it if some giver is not giving me, but I can help if I have to give somebody else. Start with yourself. I lived in the same environment. I distinctly remember in RSBY, in first 2 years, I used to struggle to get money for within the government. वो देता नहीं था पैसा. Finance वाले कहते इतना क्या करेंगे, आप क्या करेंगे? And if you read my first book, you will see the frustration that I met with. But I said, खुद ही को कर बुलंद. धीरे करके, it achieved a status where I said, the joint secretary से नहीं आया, कितना पैसा चाहिए आपको? But in doing that, I did not treat my people in the same manner as the others treated me. The tragedy is, and I talk to youngsters also, when I go to the academy to talk to officers who's put in 25 years, and all of them are cursing their secretaries, I tell them, you will be Secretary Government of India very soon. Don't behave like your own secretary now. You're going, Timbuktu से secretary बन के, कल वो भी गाली दे रहे थे अपने secretary को, secretary बन गए, फिर वही चीज कर रहा है. अरे भाई, ये तो सास बहू वाला चक्कर हो गया ना. जब तक आप बहू है, सास को गाली देते रहेंगे, जब आप सास बन गए तो आप सास बनते. No, who's going to do that? आपको अंग्रेज तो आएगा नहीं इसे ठीक करने के लिए, अभी आपको करना है. Start with yourself. And I benefited. Initially I had the problem, but then everyone got to know ये तो help करता है. गलत बात मत ले, और सही ले जाएगा. I distinctly remember as executive director of देवबंधु, एक इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट के साथ में सेक्रेटरी एनवायरनमेंट के प्रोग्राम चला गया. अब कोई हिम्मत कर सकता है आज की तारीख? उसका किस एलिगेशन लग जाएगा, इसने कितने पैसे खा लिए, इसको लेकर गया. आप साफ रखिए, ट्रांसपेरेंट रखिए, आप सबकी हेल्प कीजिए. जो हेल्प करने, जैसे नेता, I mean, since you will be facing politicians, let me explain this to you. हम लोग नेता को बार बार कहते हैं, अगर आप नेता का सही काम तुरंत कर दीजिए, तो उसके गलत काम को आप ना कहेंगे तो वो समझ जाएगा. मेजॉरिटी ऑफ देम. लेकिन सही काम को तुरंत कीजिए. I was wrong in the beginning of my career. I thought सब प्रॉब्लम्स नेता की, तो जब नेता घुसता था तो मैं प्रेजुडिस हो जाता था और कोई काम नहीं करता था. तो कुछ गड़बड़ हो गया, जो कह रहा है गड़बड़ हो. धीरे I understood, यार ये नेता है, इसका कोई. So if it is illegal, don't do it. But there is a huge gray area where you can actually and should help the politician. Why not? And then work out principles की उस principles को दूसरा आदमी आएगा, उसका भी काम करोगे. You will evolve as an individual to be reckoned with the sense of helping everybody, including नेता. तब आप नेता को ना अगर कहेंगे तो समझ जाएगा 90% काम तो कर देता है यार, एक दो काम में है. Believe me, and I've seen many officers, no नेता will come to you with wrong work. गलत काम लेकर आएगा ही नहीं आपके पास. वो जाएगा जिससे हो जाएगा काम, उसके पास जाएगा. बहुत से ऐसे काम करना, तो उनको निपटने दीजिए. आप क्यों परेशान होते हैं?
We have time for one more last question. I think Surana ji wanted to ask. We can ask after the discussion is over. Sir will be available for some time, but we allow the others to.
One question. In lighter way.
आपने अभी फरमाया इनएफिशिएंट है तो कैबिनेट सेक्रेटरी बन जाएगा. इट वाज अ कैजुअल रिमार्क और यू हैड सम फेस इन योर माइंड.
देखिए, बिना फेस के तो माइंड में आता नहीं.
आई गॉट द आंसर सर.
तो मैं हवा में तो बात वैसे भी नहीं करता, चाहे लाइट हो चाहे हेवी हो, है ना. I have written what I'm saying is, without naming, I have written a full chapter on my interface with the cabinet secretary in the book. So I have nothing to hide. So whatever I have written, whether in poll or otherwise, I stand by what I have written in my book. I say that. Cabinet Secretariat, I'm sorry to say, has been reduced to worse than a post office. And I say that with all the conviction at my command. It's very unfortunate because I've seen some outstanding cabinet secretaries, absolutely outstanding cabinet secretaries, but institution we were proud of. Since I was a part of Cabinet Secretariat, I've seen it from inside, I've seen it from outside, and sometimes I feel sad that this is an institution which we should have been proud of, but I don't think I'm proud of at this point in time. I'm very candid about it.
So thank you very much, sir, for your candid, astute, and awesome remarks and this engaging conversation. For those of you who've not had a chance to ask questions, are free to engage with him while the others of us can carry on. But thank you, everyone, for your time, for your patience, for coming here on this Saturday weekend morning.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So all of us have realized by now that this is a legacy of which we have just got a glimpse. And all the time on this planet Earth is less to talk about this. However, we are very fortunate to have a glimpse of this legacy. I request our esteemed director, sir, to present mementos as a token of gratitude and thanks to Shri Anil Swarup ji and to Uday. With this, we come to the end of this program, but this is just a beginning. As Sir has rightly said, that be the change you want to see in the world. So that change for many of us might begin today as we get inspired by Sir's profound words. With this, we end this program. Thank you very much.
I request all the guests to join for lunch. I request all the guests, dignitaries to join for lunch.